Hello and welcome to the AlphaSoftware demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product here at AlphaSoftware. Today we are going to be covering something that is new in Alpha TransForm as opposed to Alpha Anywhere. For those of you unfamiliar with Alpha TransForm, it is a software as a service product, but it is free to use for personal limited use. And it is a really cool way to do data collection, kick off workflows, and some other things as well. You can find it at transform.alphasoftware.com. And today we're going to be talking about a new feature in Transform called Anonymous Forms, which is available currently in the beta. You also have access to the beta by going to transformbeta.alphasoftware.com. Before I kick it off, like I do every week, just doing a quick audio and video check. Let me just take a look in the questions here. And if you could just let me know if you could see my screen, hear my voice, that would be great. Just go ahead in the questions box or the chat box. Just let me know if my sound is coming through. Okay, wonderful. Thanks very much. So hello to everyone. And this is a really cool feature. So let's talk about first what anonymous forms are. We didn't love the name anonymous forms, but it is in fact what other companies do in fact call this functionality in their products. So we're going to go with it as opposed to reinventing the wheel. But really what anonymous forms are simply forms where you don't require the user to log in. They are not necessarily anonymous because you might ask people for their name, address, social security number, who knows what you might be asking for. So they're not anonymous in that sense, but what it means is they don't have to be a named user in the Transform system. They are available to anyone. All you have to do is pass along a link. So let's take a look at some of the use cases for the anonymous forms. So anonymous forms can be used by sending, like I said, like sending off a link to someone for them to fill out a form. You might do that for a patient intake form, maybe before they show up to a doctor's office or a dentist's office or something like that. But it can also be used in what's called kiosk mode. In other words, you can have a public tablet or a tablet that's out someplace or some sort of kiosk or computer set up, pointed to this particular link that you've created to Transform, and you could use it for a whole bunch of different reasons. One thing you could do is create a visitor badge generator. So when, say, someone shows up to the front desk, they can actually fill in their name and who they're going to see, and it can take a picture of them, and it can automatically generate a badge. I'm going to be showing you an example of that in a few minutes. Other things might include event registration. This would be great, like if people are arriving for a conference or for a training session. Customer feedback stations, safety check-in and worker check-out to make sure there's no one left on the factory floor at the end of the day. That might be a good use of it. Equipment loan tracker. If your company or organization has got equipment that people can check out and use out in the field, you might want to set up something like that. Simple surveys, like if you're running a cafeteria, maintenance requests, for example, in a building. You could do delivery confirmation. So if you do have a mail room, you can let people who drop things off indicate that they've been dropped off. Digital waiver signing. So you're going to a tour, you're doing bungee jumping, you're doing something exciting, they're going to make you sign the waiver just in case something happens. You could do that easily using an anonymous form in Transform. And you could also just do it, for HR onboarding. So those are just some of the use cases that come to mind right away, but I know that there are a bunch of others. Let's take a look at one, and then I'm going to show you some of the capabilities, and maybe you can think of some ways in which you could use this in your own business. So here is a visitor badge kiosk system. This is just a screenshot that I took from my browser, but it's all set up and working. And it says welcome, and click start to begin. And then all the visitor does is by tapping on a field, a keyboard appears if you're using like a tablet. If you're setting it up as an actual PC, then you have the keyboard there anyway. And the user simply fills it in. It does have the ability to take pictures and save those pictures like we've done here. And then when it's done, you could set this up with an on-submit event that would kick off a process, such as getting a printer to print out an ID badge, like we've done here in this example. All right, so let's go take a look. And when that's done, the system resets. So this is like a kiosk mode. And you have control over all of these screens, what they say. You can put in logos, you can put in graphics, you can embed all kinds of stuff. But let's take a look at how it actually works behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a browser. I think Safari is good. Let's go over to TransForm. Okay, so here I am in TransForm beta.alphasoftware.com, and I have already created a form called Visitor ID. And if I click View Instances, you'll see, actually maybe design would have been a better thing to show you. Well, this is fine. I'll click on one of these, and you'll see 2, 3. Let's grab this one. Okay, and you'll see this is all the information that the person has filled out. So I've created a form just with a visitor name, company, reason for visit, host name, photo, and visit time, badge ID, which at some point I'm going to hook up by using TPL to actually generate, sort of a short GUID or something like that for the badge ID. But that's all it took here, is just to set up a simple form. So now back on the home screen, to get to this anonymous form feature, you're going to go up into configure. So I'm going to click configure. Hang on a second, I'm going to get the browser focus, and then I'm going to click configure. There we go. And here I have already created some anonymous forms. So to add a new anonymous form, I would just simply click the add button, and I could say blank form. And then I can give it a description, webinar test form, and then the form type. And I can choose any of these. For example, I could have a 5S audit form, right? And now there are some limits. You might want to limit the number of forms that the user can fill out. I'm on an account which has unlimited numbers of forms, but you might say, listen, I don't want to have more than X number filled out, or this can only be filled out once, or things like that. When that's done, I'm actually ready. Let me go ahead and just say done. As soon as I save that by clicking up here on save, I have an anonymous form defined. And there are a couple of different things I can do with it. One thing I can do with it is I can generate that QR code. So I'm going to click that. And so I think I've set this to unlimited. So as a result, if you, and I'm going to try this myself, if you hold your phone up to that QR code that you're seeing right now on your screen, if all goes well, we should be looking at the 5S audit form. And you should see something which says start filling in form. You'll click on that. You should see the 5S audit form. So that's as simple as it is in the simple case to create an anonymous form that you could send out. You can also create a link. So clicking this copies a link to the clipboard. So let's just show it here so we can actually see it, so everyone can see it. Paste and go. It's going to load that form. Start filling it in. And then there is my 5S audit form. All right, cool. So let's go back to TransForm. And I want to show you something else. So those options, when you're setting these up, so these are, as you can see, these are where your anonymous forms are. Here's where you can add a new one, edit, remove, and so on. If I click on edit, and I click on more settings, there is the ability to define JSON here in this field. And that JSON can define all kinds of things. It can define all kinds of templates and stuff. Let's pop back into the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you some of those things. Oops. So you can have templates. These are the screens that appear before or after your form is filled out. So there's a start template. That's the first time they arrive there on the scene. You can define that. There's a save template after the form has been saved. Restart, which is like start, but it's when you've already filled out a form and it's starting a new one. If there is an error, because you can still set up error checking and stuff like that, you can have it appear here in a special error screen. There's a header and a footer that you can put above and below all of the templates. And you can also, in that JSON object, set the cloud path and path prefixes. This is not actually a this is not actually a template, it's a policy. But what it lets you do is it lets you define your path prefix so that you can insert pictures and other things into your templates. I'm displaying this here on the screen just to show this to you as an example. We have the Alpha logo as the folder that we want to go to, and we're whitelisting it here by putting it here in path prefixes, so that when we get to the template and we decide to insert an image tag, instead of putting in this whole HTTPS blah, 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 we put in simply its alias with a period and then with the asset that we're trying to get, AlphaSoftware logo.ping. This is a working example, which I will make available to you. And it's only and I'm pointing this out because sometimes it's easy to get syntax wrong when you're dealing with these things manually. Now, something I'd like to point out though is that you don't have to build these things manually. You can easily let Chat GPT generate your templates. In fact, that's exactly what I did. I pointed it over to our documentation. So let's pop over to documentation. And here I'm going to give you the bit.ly link. And I'll put that in chat. Send that out. Okay, it's there in your, should be able to grab that from the interface. But this bit.ly link takes you to the TransForm documentation. You can also get here by going to documentation.alphasoftware.com and just do a search for anonymous forms. It's also a section in the user's guide part of TransForm. And this will explain all of the different sections, all of the different templates. It'll tell you a couple of other cool things as well. So let's go down, and there's a few other things I want to show you. Okay, the next thing I want to tell you is that those templates, they can use TPL. So for example, when you completed that 5S audit and it said, hey, thanks for submitting the audit, it could say your score was, 85%. Great job, Steve, or something like that. It can be customized with the data that was filled out in the form. The other thing is, if you want to make sure your links aren't being abused, is you can set a CAPTCHA or a reCAPTCHA. That is an option that is built in as well. As I explained before, you can use it in kiosk mode. That's so when someone fills out a form and they complete it, the kiosk resets and it's ready for the next form to be entered. Another thing that's kind of interesting is that you can set the links to be paused, suspended, or active, and you do that back in TransForm Central. When you have a suspended link, like we'll do here for, here's one, let's suspend the 5S audit for a second. We'd edit that and we would say suspended. And when it's suspended, it's going to be as if it never existed. You haven't deleted it because you might want to keep it. You might want to turn it back on again. But if they get there, they're just going to get a 404 error. On the other hand, you might want to let them know that, hey, you've arrived at the right link, but we're not taking submissions right now. Like maybe you wanted to say, I'm only at 9 a.m. I'm going to log in and let people start filling in data. Maybe they're signing up for a spot on a list. You can create what's a paused page. It's one of the templates, like the start page. And the pause page could say, I'm sorry, we're not available to take forms. Please check again later, or please check again at this time. And that's what would happen if you'd set it to pause. And then when you're ready to make it active again, you just simply click active. Of course, each time you make these changes, you're going to want to click done, and you're going to want to click save so that it updates. All right. Don't think I've got a lot more left here. Actually, just one more slide. One last thing. If you are going to be sending out, well, it doesn't matter if you're doing the links to one person or even in kiosk mode, you might want to pre-fill some of the fields that are going to be there ahead of time. And you can do that by putting in some URL parameters. So in the example that we have here for one of the anonymous forms, it's name equals Dave and company equals Alpha. So when I open up a form like that, it'll be pre-filled with Dave and with Alpha. One way you might want to use this though is, let's say you're using this at a trade show, right? And you've got a QR code up on a poster and people can click it to enter to win something, right? You might want to pre-fill what event that was, because you might use, you might use that concept at many different events. So let me know that that was at the East Coast Trade Show or the West Coast Trade Show, or this is Dave's link, or this is someone else's link. So it is kind of cool. But keep in mind, these parameters are stored in the URL, so they are in plain text. Don't put in a credit card or a social security number, but something like a first name or something like that would be fine. All right, so let's see if there are any questions. Okay. There are no questions on this one. There is a question, a general one on Alpha Anywhere, which is how can I run a report that prompts the user to fill in a start date and an end date when it's running. I'm going to assume that this is a web application. And the way that I would do that would probably be by using aliases, building those into the filter. If you give me a moment, I might actually be able to find the documentation that shows how to do that. So I'm just going to freeze here for a second and see what I can do. Documentation. All right. So hold on a second. Hang on one moment. Anyway, what you're going to want to search for, I don't see it right here immediately, but you're going to take a look at using aliases. So typically in that report, especially if it's coming against a SQL data source, you're going to have a field on your interface that allows the user to select a date. That date is then passed into an alias, and the alias is used to perform the SQL query. And we use aliases to prevent bad information from being entered into the date that could cause what's called a SQL injection attack, which allows people to sneak data out of your database. But do take a look for that. You're looking for aliases. If you need help finding a particular link, go ahead and just send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. And let's see, when will we see the latest? Okay, someone said I just signed in. When will we see the latest recording? We try to get these up each Friday after Wednesday webinar. But if you would like to see it sooner, if you're like, hey, it's not been posted, you can always just bug me directly. Send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and we can send you out the raw link if you want to watch. All right, so that looks like that's all we've got for today. That is terrific. I am going to be out next week, moving a kid into college, believe it or not. I can't believe I'm getting that old, but I'll be back the following week. Of course, we're here all the time to answer any of your questions. So thanks very much for showing up today, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks back at our next Alpha Software demo and Q&A webcast. And take care. Bye-bye.